We have a new player's handbook, and the layout blows my mind. It is some of the best layout I've ever seen in my life in a book. This art feels like it's flying out at me, and that feels like a very intentional layout design. Is that correct?
That is correct. That particular concept was called Portal. It took its inspiration more so from proto-Renaissance and medieval religious art, like altarpieces, things that were meant to evoke a space that allowed a transference between worlds. The core books are your portal into a completely different world. So that's where that sort of framing mechanism originated from.
The art for the new player's handbook has a very deliberate and intentional style that I've never seen in a D&D book, where I feel like a story is always being told.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
In a much more in-depth way. Warlock Pact of the Great Old Ones is amazing. It's one of my favorite pieces because they're just standing there in front of the ocean and all the tentacles are erupting behind them.
Oh, yeah.
And like with all the warlocks, their patron is always visible.
There is. Have fun finding them. But that one in particular, if you notice, she's perhaps got a little missing eye. And one of our sorcerers has a jar with a little green eye in it. Did they trade?
Wow.
Are they friends? Maybe.
Wow. Maybe not friends. See, that's the kind of stuff I absolutely get obsessed with.
Yeah.
This is a very art-heavy book. I
It
feel
is.
like even if you weren't reading the book, you would understand D&D
Yeah.
just visually flipping through it.
Yeah, a book, especially with how big these are now. Like, it's grown since we've last met 10 years ago. And I know that picking up a book like that, knowing there's rules inside and content to comprehend, especially if you're a new player, that can be like, at least for me, it would be immediately a little bit intimidating. But then if you open it up and you see, oh, wait a minute, there's these pieces of art that's complementing the text, that's, showing what this spell describes. Hopefully that'll kind of pull people in a little gentler and make the transition a little bit easier.
Art is done a certain way at the beginning of every class, and art is done a very specific way for every subclass. So I feel like even visually, if I was like just throwing through the book, I'd probably know where I was.
This handbook, more so than maybe any in the past, has really had a lot of scrutiny in terms of like user experience. I would say that the communication design, the bare bones graphic design of this book, Jeremy, Chris, James, and Wes deserve a graphic design credit just as much as I do, or Trish, or Tristan, because a lot of the changes you will see in the book are about hierarchy, making things more scannable, even like something as minute as making the page numbers bigger and scooting them out to the edges more, because this is a guidebook. Making decisions around hierarchy, shifting type styles, and it's not the most exciting thing to talk about, but it's probably the most impactful from a communication design perspective, in that it's allowing folks to scan and use this book in a more impactful and faster way.
That feels like the entire book. Like, it's a very easy read, and it's a very easy book to know where you are at. And there feels like a momentum even when you're building characters. Like you have even art that is like line art, black and white line art that's there while you're making your character, and then things build up and you start picking your subclass, and now the subclass art is all very colorful, and fully realized. It's just kind of a remarkable experience as a book, especially as someone who's grown up with every player's handbook. To see how things have progressed.
And that's the whole point of D&D, right? It's storytelling. So there should be storytelling in all of the art. You should be able to look at a picture, and there should be something there that tells you that there's more than what you see.
I'm weirdly obsessed with the Oath of Vengeance Paladin multi-class with the Warlock, Pact of the Old Ones. The fact that we're seeing multi-class art is fantastic.
Yeah, that was a fun one. We spent a lot of time on all the character designs for the subclasses as well, so being able to mix them, and especially in one image, was pretty great. And that was one of our favorite combos too. That sort of edginess of the Oath of Vengeance Paladin and sort of the tentacle weirdness, right, of the ancient old one. So you get some nice combos there.
Is there one piece that is like a personal favorite, or is that too
Oh, I have a lot of pieces that are personal favorites. The one that actually sticks out the most for me is not what you would expect, but there's an illustration of this little gnome talking into a crystal ball with what looks like their mom or grandma or somebody, and they're just having like a really nice conversation with each other, but it's authentic to the world in a way. It's like, yeah, that does make sense. Yeah, they might just be talking to each other like as a family, like they're catching up, like almost like the phone. So that's probably one of my favorite pieces. It's really charming and it's really sweet. If I had to pick another piece, I think I really love the Glamour Bard.
That goes hard.
The rock star, yeah. The rock star of the Feywild sort of place, right? You see that, I think the Bard is a good example, but I think all of the classes do that, of trying to show how the different class overall plus the subclasses can be different. So whether it's like the subject matter of like dance versus glamour, or is it just even like the type of personality that could embody all of those could be totally different. So the Glamour Bard is also a personal favorite that I like to play. So when that one was being included in the 24PH, I was like, yes, this one, I want this to be the rock star. We need to make this the rock star.
Spell art is really fun because you are given some boundaries. There are things to work with. The spell needs to work a certain way. It affects a certain area, right?
Yeah.
A certain space. If it's one of those, like say the fireball spell, if you might have seen that one. It's a wizard casting this incredible, it almost looks like a thin, streamlined flamethrower, I'd say.
Yeah.
Like, so that interpretation of it was spectacular. And there's maybe an empty clearing in a forest full of spiders, and she is just having a ball and clearing the area. And it's like the lighting of that, along with just her pose and like just the confidence it's eerily it's so thrilling.
I love seeing the Hunger of Hadar and how horrifying Hunger of Hadar is, because it's a horrifying description, but to also see the art behind that is fantastic.
Right, and it's always a learning experience for me, especially for somebody who does not play a spellcaster, to be like, well, you know, to read the description and be like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna be commissioning that to be depicted, and then have it come in, and then, you know, have Jeremy kind of look over it and be like, well, it needs to be a little bit more like horrifying.
We have to talk about the familiars.
Oh, that's what I wanted to talk about. Okay, so find familiar spell. Did you know it just wasn't a regular owl?
It's so perfect because it shows you that you don't just have to summon a standard owl. Like, it can have a personality. It can be quirky and strange.
No, we're fighting like oozes that come at us. Why would we just have we can just have an owl, but I mean, it's so funny that I've always thought, find familiar is, you know, this very sweet, mundane creature, and to have the artist say like, it can actually be wearing a top hat, or be just a completely bonkers spider creature, was just so delightful. And I'm like, this shows the example to the players of what it could be.
What is it about ugly cute?
What is
like
it?
The giant eyeball with spider legs is like kind of cute.
The little teeth around its eye?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, just could be hanging out on your shoulder. It's fantasy at its best, because you know this is your familiar, so it's going to be your little buddy.
The art and the design does such a great job of explaining what D&D is visually. Everything feels like an education, like edutainment, right? Like every piece of art is like fantastic, but they're also demonstrating something now. Like, you look at Warlock art and you understand a lot more about Warlocks.
Oh yeah.
The Wizards, same thing. Like, you feel who this person is about. And that comes down to like the artwork for the different species. And that comes down to several different key parts of like even the cover art and stuff like that. Like, it's all informative of what this experience is.
I think a great example that turned out even, I think, well in layout, but also just in the art itself and how it's presented, is like the weapons and armor. It's like the first time I had actually like seen hide armor depicted. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I would wear that. And understanding like the difference between a pike and a lance and a spear, you know, actually seeing, I was like, oh, okay. That section's astounding. Basically the Sears Roebuck catalog of Faerun, so to speak. But it seeing every piece of armor and all of the weapons that you find in the equipment section visualized is super satisfying. And that was a nice little Tetris puzzle to pull together as a layout.
Yeah, I almost want a mini game where I'm just like, okay, this is my subclass. This is my background, literally in the background, with the background art, which is intentional as well, right?
Absolutely. That is another huge visual addition to this player's handbook. You're not seeing a person visualized, because that's not what it's important. It's the environment that you came from that sort of defines your, who defines who you are. And being able to see those environments, we have astounding art, and they're all sort of like landscape visualizations of a place. And that was another one, similar to the subclass being always verticals on the outside of the page, deciding early on, this is how we're going to do backgrounds. How would layout work with that? And doing a unique layout instead of just like the 2-column format.
The species art is very much setting the table for what these species are kind of about.
Yes.
Or like getting a sense of like different members of that species. Like the Goliaths are moving this giant pillar of rock. You've got gnomes all working to kind of build
their little construct.
Yeah, their little constructs, which I love, and they each have their own individual personalities. Like,
yeah, there's so many wonderful, again, storytelling details in the species section. The artist did some really gorgeous knockout framings for the elf species section. Like you can see the architecture knocked out from it's just beautifully done. And then the dwarf species opener, like they're working, they're working on some amazing, like well-made, maybe weaponry or something. But then there's also someone coming to deliver some baked goods.
Yeah.
And a little child who's learning maybe the ways of dwarven fine artistry. There's just so many little details, each one, and the orc one is so charming too. Like you just see a family, like a community,
yeah.
And everybody, there's so much personality in each of these. It gives it so much more depth too, because you're like, what kind of community did I belong to?
Yeah, which of these am I, potentially?
Yeah.
Yeah. For the new player's handbook, it does feel like a love note to the history of like D&D art, because we have some of the styles are from older books.
Yeah.
And some of the styles are styles we've never seen before. And it feels like it's so much from the past, but so much from the future as well in terms of style. It's fascinating to watch. Even listening to like Tyler Jacobson talk about the cover, trying to evoke some of those older Easley paintings.
Yeah.
In the cover. There's even a piece of art that is showing off, different worlds. You see Raceland and Caramon fighting off a wyvern. I feel like all the art is kind of showing you a multiversal view of D&D, but also the history of D&D all at once.
Right. I mean, there's so much of it. There's 50 years of it. And that's not counting how many worlds that our players have built on their own, It's being able to nod back to our past and all of the things that mean so much to people, and then continue to move it forward and expand our worlds to have more people join us.
What did you enjoy most about working on this?
What I enjoyed the most was that we tried a lot of things. There was a lot of process and a lot of iteration for all of the design work. And I think what we hope is that when players pick this up, that they do not see a lot of iteration. They see a clear and understandable piece of design and presentation of game mechanics and information. So that collaboration, that iteration, that was my favorite part of this. It's made for a very long process, and it's been one that's we've all been working on it on the side while working on other products through over the course of the past couple of years. But it feels like it's coming to fruition in a very satisfying way.
Do you have non-graphic design things that are your favorite in the book?
Yes, the art goes without saying. I think is sort of like the showpiece of like flipping through the book. You will always be blown away by that. But I think one of the cool things that I got a window in this couple of years of iteration working on layout was getting a little bit of a glimpse into the mind of Jeremy Crawford, and that how little hierarchy changes in game mechanics and in rule sets make for a huge difference in how you not only read and sort of ingest it, but how you understand it. And I just found that like truly fascinating by how just like changing a sentence to something with like a list or changing hierarchy and using a sans serif typeface before a serif typeface. Like those little decisions, there's a lot of thought that goes into them. And hopefully you don't notice it, because if you don't notice it and you grasp the information or are able to play without thinking about it, then we've succeeded. So that is my favorite thing that I have seen over the course of the past couple of years, getting a little glimpse of how that works from a game design perspective.
We're almost at the print review, final print review. How does this feel for you? It's been a few years.
When I'm holding that first copy, it will still probably take me a while to think it's real, but it feels good because the team of us worked on this book. We worked I mentioned it several times, that collaborative experience of iteration and working together to make sure every piece none of us were working in silos. We were very much a team on this. Not that we aren't in all the products that we work on here, but this one felt specifically
all hands on deck.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's wild to think that it's almost finished. There's not one part that is my favorite. It's the people I get to work with. It's the artists that I feel so like I'm their fans. They are the ones, like making all of this happen. I get like I get a little. It's the artists I get to work with to do the back and forth and to hear their ideas and to be inspired by them. It's getting to work with Matt, my graphic designer, and just see how thoughtful he is in presenting the information, because 10 years ago, I was the one in his seat, and I'm just blown away like, that's a great idea. Like, I wish I had thought of that. And I'm constantly learning everything from, Jeremy and Josh and all of the leads, all of the writers, the editors. There's so much consideration and so much love put into these books. Like, getting to just be along for the ride and learn from these wonderful people is my favorite part. So,
how important is art to the legacy of D&D?
Each edition has kind of had a look to it. I think people look back on the edition that they played or that was meaningful to them, maybe where they started, and that holds a very special place. Like I think to be able to contribute to being a part of that visual legacy, I think is pretty wild. And to also shepherd it forward into continuing to evolve it and bring more artists in and expand the ways we can depict D&D, I think is pretty awesome.
When you pre-order the digital physical bundle, you also get an exclusive digital Gold Dragon Mini for our 3D virtual tabletop, the Dragons of D&D Digital Art Book, 15 dice sets, 34 frames, and 15 backdrops. And if you pre-order the digital 2024 Player's Handbook on D&D Beyond, you get exclusive bonuses. 12 sets of digital dice representing each class, 10 new frames, and 5 new backdrops. And all of those Player's Handbook bonuses are available right now on D&D Beyond. You can find the links to all of that in this video description.
Thank you so much for watching. We have a ton of video content coming out about the new Player's Handbook and all the new Core Rulebooks, the new Monster Manual, the new Dungeon Master's Guide. So be sure to check out all of that content. And thank you for watching.